second, and
I'm willing to, yes.
Okay,
Gabrowska.
because he said he would probably just reappoint you and Mike if you both were willing to do that.
Don't think we don't have to
Okay.
worry about, we'll probably meet by phone.
So I should just continue on.
Deep thought right now.
Okay,
Well, we certainly should have that built in case.
What's that? Did I do it?
news route,
Yes, I'm
bars
sure
in
that it's on
Florida
your
are
phone.
closing at 5.
Probably is.
That's my wife. Yeah, it sounds,
Okay, I
sounds
will
like
do
they're
that
gonna.
next time I see her. Are you willing to stay on the trip?
I'm out of here.
Might as well.
Sure. Tim Means,
Okay, I probably better turn my phone off.
wondered if the two of you were willing to stay on, and I said I would ask you when I saw you tonight.
Sure.
Okay.
Our terms expired at the end of February, so.
I even managed to
Ruth, I have bad news
pen to
for
take
you.
one.
Really bad news.
Yeah. So
Are you?
called me up this afternoon and said,
No, the bad news.
that's fine.
Yeah. You want my bad news?
Yeah.
In Florida, the bars are closing at
too late.
5, and everybody has to be off the beach by 11. She
Probably not for
isn't
my,
that awful? Oh,
Amanda's after you,
But
but
the,
she doesn't have a PowerPoint, so you can pass it off to Heidi.
head man here in for the whole state. He came out today and he said, this is the way it's going to
all
be.
right. Here's a. I think
Bingo.
Publix.
No more than 10
Publix
people
sells
in
alcohol,
one spot.
so you can just.
Except for board meetings are exempt. They are.
I know.
It was on TV, yeah.
And they have to do that.
You can have more than 10 at a board meeting.
Our library closed.
You know what I think would be a good idea? You know what I think is a good idea? To bring in one of those Cairo whatever chambers where it gets really, really, really cold.
Local bars are closing.
Yeah, go in one of those.
See that?
Yeah. Yeah. A double, yeah. A double. Well, you know what? I think I'm going to invest in one of those and bring it here, and I'll charge everybody that wants to go in.
Yeah.
Except you, Ruth. You can go in for free. You can go in for free.
We're already 1 minute
I
late.
know, I'm a nice, truthfully, I think I'm a nice person, so. Is it 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock? All right, I'm gonna call this meeting to order. Megan will do roll call.
Mr. Bonfiglio.
Here.
Mr. Piaski.
Here.
Mr. Tim.
Here.
Mr. Cap.
Here.
Mr. Eckstein.
Here.
Mr. Jarvis.
Here.
Mrs. Collada.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Peterman. Mr. Lauer.
Here.
Mr. Kirschner.
Here.
Right, thank you. We will stand for silent prayer and pledge of allegiance. I want you to note that we have 2 flags to choose from. This one or the one that Mr. Civic won at the Hancock Community Center. So you can pick your pick. Pledge allegiance. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda, the amended agenda. Motion by Mr. Cap. Second by Mr. Eckstein. Any questions or comments?
She's lost us.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Should have worn my name tag.
Next, we have an approval of the minutes of the February 18th, 2020 monthly meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Lauer.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jarvis. Any questions? Yes, Larry. Mr. Tim.
In one of the motions that were recorded, it's very vague as to what happened. The motion I'm referring to is the motion where we increased the salaries for elected officials.
Yes.
There's the motion just says we increase the salaries. It doesn't tell us who, it doesn't tell us how much or a percentage or
Okay.
anything of that nature, and I think the public has a right to know that information.
Absolutely right, and we can add that to the minutes. I believe it, do you remember?
What we can do is we can add the actual offices, and we could actually have a spreadsheet of sorts showing what they'll be paid in 2021, 22.
So this is the summarized version of the minutes. When we do the official minutes that goes into the proceedings books, the full resolution goes in there, and that does have the full increase in there. But if you're saying you would like it in the version that goes to the Argus,
It's
Is that-
publicized, yes.
yeah, which is, it's already gonna be in, so if you'd like to submit an amendment, we can do that. But in the published version in the booklet, it's gonna have the full resolution in there.
What is the full resolution?
The resolution that you voted on last month, the one that would have been included in your packet, that gets added into the full version of the minutes for the printed version. But by statute, we're required to print a summary when we publish it in the Argus each month. So that was just a summary version that had the titles in it.
If you'd like, we could add that to the minutes, if you would like.
You want a motion to that effect?
Yes.
Okay, I would move that the salary information be included in the motion.
All right, it's a motion by Mr. Tim, is there a second? Second by Mr. Eckstein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you, Mr. Tim. Now we'll vote on the minutes, yes, with that change. We have a motion, don't we? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thanks, Ruth. Okay, next we have public comments, and that is 3 minutes per person, a 15-minute maximum time period. And I understand we have a controversial item under zoning. Please allow everyone to have their 3 minutes to speak. You will receive one warning. Then you will be asked to leave, and Sheriff Zolke is here to assist you if necessary. So let's all be nice. All right, first we have Mr. Tim Mannion will be speaking.
Thank you. I'm here on behalf of some of the residents and myself opposing the proposed rezoning of Pleasant View School. Not because we're against development, but we're against it because it's in the wrong location. And Paul Olson, who is the developer, is a wonderful person. We all like him. We know him. But again, this is not about personality. It's about the project. And the biggest problem with this is there hasn't been any due diligence to evaluate whether or not this is the right location. And it hasn't been done by Mr. Olson. There's no business plan. There's no drawings. He's talked a little bit about building 1 to 13 apartments in a school in a rural area. And I've expressed all of the reasons why we think it's a bad idea in my protest letter. And in the last zoning committee meeting, amongst the committee members, there was some discussion as to whether or not this was the right location. And some of the committee members indicated that we have questions about whether or not this is the right place for this development. Others said, has there been an environmental impact study done? And there has not. Others have said, because there's so much pushback from the neighborhood, he abstained from voting. So it did pass last night at the town meeting. We asked to be on the agenda again because we were not on it in January when this was decided on or received the blessing of the town chairman or the town board. And it got a little heated. There wasn't a whole lot of respect shown, and that's not the way that we want to operate or certainly address an issue like this. This is not personal. It's really what benefits the community or not. And in this case, this development of 13 one-bedroom apartments, our big concern is who's going to rent those apartments and how does it impact the neighborhood? So we are, we have 50% of the neighbors who had joined this property against and opposing this development, not a development, but multi-housing in this location. We also have evidence, and we've expressed a number of times how many different ways the neighbors and neighborhood would be damaged by this. So in this case, my personal view and the reason that I drafted this protest letter on behalf of myself and neighbors is that we would like to request that there's some reasonability used, there's due diligence and time taken to effectively follow the comprehensive plan, not just totally ignore it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, your time is up.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Chris Sorensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the County Board for this opportunity to address the same situation. My name is Chris Sorensen, representing the Wild Rose School District at this time and at this meeting for the sole purpose of trying to update you to get your information as to how we have arrived at this position. We closed the school a year and a half ago and decided to put it up for sale, offered it to a family that had donated it. They declined. Mr. Mannion had shown interest in the project right away. He had the second opportunity to purchase it prior to listing it. He went through it, decided not to do such, which was fine. We then entertained other offers, multiples. Many of them were lowball offers. We finally put a floor on what we were willing to accept. All of a sudden, Mr. Olson came in with a plan, got interested, and then Mr. Mannion got interested, which was his privilege. He met with a different realtor than what we had. His realtor knew what our floor was. His offer still came in below the floor that we were willing to accept. Substantial monetary difference between the two bids. We weren't even obligated to address his bid, but for common courtesy, we did. Paul's offer, what I say, was substantially more money with less things that needed to be done in order to make the transition work. We took a look at that, and both were total cash offers, so there was no financing. We took a look at that, at the potential of doing this transaction as raising the value of the property from nothing to what this complex could generate for both the town of Saxville, Waushara County, the Wild Rose School District, and with apartments, hopefully, bring some more children into the Wild Rose School District. Now, talking to Mr. Olson today, he informed me that he was looking at more 2 to 3 bedroom homes and not all these single bedroom things. I don't know what he has proposed in your plan. But the positive things here, in something like this in our area, for people that are young people, getting married, needing a place to start, this would be a small, affordable place to start. People, if they have some kind of family issues, separation, domestic, whatever, could be a place for people to go. Older people, if they have a large house, want to downsize, but still are able to take care of themselves. It's a complete one-floor flat entrance, easy accessibility. And the other thing they address in here is wildlife damage and moving and all of this stuff. Well, we all know what we've brought into the area over the last few years with the coyotes, wolves, bear, and I cannot see that this is going to affect the wildlife at all. So I'm here to support Mr. Olson's transaction, and as I say, we tried different things and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sorensen. Next, we have Mr. Jeff Gabrielski. Close? Sorry. Is it Gabrielska?
That's correct.
There we go.
I will expedite. My name is Jeff Gabrielska, and I'm a property owner with a 40-acre parcel of land directly to the south of the PV location. There are two main issues of concern in the rezoning request for the Pleasant View property. The first, which I stated at the zoning commission hearing, is the correct placement and fit for this type of change. The location of PV places it at a hub of about 15 to 20 miles from any of what I call developed towns. Granted, Poisippi is about 4 miles away, but it does not provide the services that a more developed community does and that a tenant would be seeking, such as medical services, grocery stores, area of entertainment, and ironically, a school. Bottom line in this concern is there is enough demand in this particular location. Is there enough demand in this particular location to make this business enterprise work? My second concern is the process that was followed in the request for this zoning change. As you may or may not be aware, the process for obtaining a change in zoning is outlined in section 58-163 of the Waushara County ordinances. It gives the basic steps to be followed in a zoning change. As I read section 58, I see the following steps occurring in a patterned order to give proper notification to adjacent landowners as well as the general public. I will summarize the steps as I see them. Step 1, the individual wishing to seek a zoning change obtains the proper forms from the zoning office and is instructed as to their completion and any additional information that may be necessary. Step 2, the completed forms are returned to the zoning office for examination of completeness and correctness, as well as any questions from the zoning office may come forward in a preliminary sense at that time. If the application is correct and acceptable, the request moves to the next step. And I apologize for not making eye contact. Step 3, at this point, the zoning office will schedule a public hearing. Notification of the hearing is given to the public and surrounding landowners, in my mind, a crucial part of this process. As well, copies of all pertinent documents are mailed to the town clerk at the town board to review. They may attend the hearing if they so choose. The zoning request is presented at the hearing, input is accepted, discussion takes place, and a roll call vote is taken. If the application is accepted, the zoning request moves forward to the next step, which is this evening. The county board reviews the application, accepts, denies, or sends it back to zoning for further scrutiny. The final step is the approval or rejection by the town board. I believe this is a good process, well thought out. My concern occurs when the process is not followed and certain steps fall out of place, specifically Mr. Olson's application. The final step in this process was placed first, in my mind disrupting and skewing the process, and I will explain why. When the proposal is presented to the town board first, with only input from the applicant, it appears as though there is no opposition, and for the most part, the town will give its blessings to the process, rightfully so. If, on the other hand, the process follows the procedure outlined in section 58-163 of the Waushara County ordinances, the people who would like to express their opinion are given that opportunity in a level playing field, allowing for a fair evaluation of the process, not one offset in favor of the applicant from the start.
Okay. I'm sorry, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on, and we have no unfinished business. So we'll move on to new business, and we'll start with the county administrator's monthly report. Mr. Civic.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors, county staff, members of the public who are here tonight. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, and I know you're probably rolling your eyes when I say that, but obviously you've all heard of the coronavirus. You've received communications from me. Copies of communications have been sent to the county staff. So you've received a great deal of information on what I am doing and what the county senior management is doing to get us through this rough period. Tomorrow in the Argus, when that's published, there will be additional information, not just from me, but from other county officials about other county operations, specifically the election that's coming up on April 7th, and that is going forward. What I wanted to emphasize to everybody, and I'm glad there are members of the public here because I'm speaking more to them than to the members of the board. Waushara County government will not be shut down. It will not even be substantially curtailed. The reason for that is, unlike, say, Apple or Nike, who've closed their stores, we can't close up shop. You can get by without buying an iPhone or a pair of sneakers for a few weeks or even a few months. But what we do here is very important. We're the government. Waushara County government and all counties have been set up back in the 19th century as an arm of the state government. We carry out state functions, state regulations, we perform state services, and we enforce state laws. The vast majority of what we do, we must do. It is mandated by law, and we will continue to do so. Does it mean everything will run swimmingly? No, we're going to have some issues with staffing as people get ill or they have issues with child care because of school closures, but we will get through this. As you know from the emails I've sent you, we will be repurposing staff as necessary to fill in labor shortages. What I want to emphasize is what we do here is even more important because we serve a lot of people, people who literally depend upon county government and the services we provide to keep their lives together, to keep a roof over their head, to keep food in their stomach. We serve a lot of vulnerable people, the elderly, the disabled, the poor, the developmentally disabled, the mentally ill, people with substance abuse problems, victims of crime, people, all sorts of folks like that who need our services day to day. And the difference between continuing to provide those services and basically closing up shop basically reverts this county to the law of the jungle, everybody fending for themselves. That's what separates us from the lower animals. More importantly, the government services that we provide, the stability that we provide, and we are an example to the community, is the difference between civilization and chaos. And I know that sounds very high-minded, but in these times when people are seeing things shut down, they look to the county government as a beacon of stability, and we intend to do so. I want to say that I have Public Health Officer Waffle here, and I have Emergency Manager Norm Diesterhoff here as well. They are here to answer any questions that you may have. They will be here for a few minutes after the meeting if any of you have questions that you don't want to ask publicly, or if any members of the public want to go ahead and ask questions. Lastly, and I'll try to end on a high note, Mrs. Collada referenced the flag that we have above the door there. I won that in a raffle Saturday evening at the Hancock Community Center. That was a fundraiser for the American Legion Post 343. These are tough times. It's tough times for our merchants. It's a tough time for our charitable organizations, particularly with their fundraising. A lot of events have been shut down, including fundraisers. So please make an effort to patronize our merchants. Many of our restaurants will not be serving in their dining rooms, but some of them will be serving takeout. See what you can do about stimulating the economy and helping our neighbors, our merchants, get through this period as well. When I won that, I decided to put it up in here, and the reason why I did that and what that flag spoke to me, and it's a fine piece of artwork, it's handcrafted by a local artisan, but what that flag spoke to me is that in this country we have faced and defeated far greater enemies than the coronavirus. We eradicated slavery. We defeated Hitler and the Japanese during the Second World War. We put a man on the moon. There's no reason why we can't get through this and conquer this as well if we all just stick together. As far as the Board of Supervisors go, I thank you for your service. I thank you for coming here tonight. I know that many people are saying we shouldn't be gathering at all, but business of government is necessary. It's the people's business, and we're going to continue to perform it. I just ask for your support. This is going to be a rough couple of weeks, probably a couple of months. So thank you, and unless somebody has questions for the public health officer or the emergency manager, I yield the floor back.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for Patty or Norm? Okay, we will move on to Land Conservation and Zoning Department Annual Report. Director Todd Waller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Evening, everybody. Can't believe it. It's my third presentation before you all already. 2019 proved to be a very successful year for our department. It was a year full of firsts, as well as unprecedented departmental involvement on multi-jurisdictional collaboratives. These collaboratives were formed to address regional and national concerns. To this end, we've witnessed our permit numbers soar to highs we haven't seen since 2008. We have been and are currently involved in the first ever court action of a violator to the NR 151 manure storage statute. We witnessed the publication of the first ever lake management plan for the Winnebago waterways, which entailed over 3 years of research and input from a multi-county collaborative. And we also witnessed the formation of a new county collaborative, the Central Sands Groundwater County Collaborative, developed to research regional groundwater quality out in the Central Sands region. We also saw another successful year in our Land Conservation Division, with several cost-sharing programs coming to fruition. While we were hit with dips and uncertainties in the economy as well as the wettest year on record, I think we weathered the storm. While the governor declared 2019 the year of clean drinking water, it was essentially for us the year of water, both quantity and quality. And I anticipate that 2020 will continue to get more and more involved, or will be getting more and more involved in water issues. As I alluded to, 2019 was a great year for us. Our office issued a total of 474 land use permits for structures in the towns that are currently under county zoning. This represents an 8% increase over the previous year. These included 59 new homes, 102 additions to homes, 313 substantially sized accessory structures, and despite the slight peaks and valleys, we have noticed a continual upward trend in construction activity since 2014. General Engineering, our current contracted inspection company, issued a total of 402 permits. These were spread amongst new homes, commercial structures, additions to homes, alterations and decks to homes, electrical installations or upgrades, and miscellaneous permits. Fees collected exceeded over $192,841, or a 14% jump from the previous year. In addition, we issued 195 sanitary permits, which authorized 53 new pout systems, 110 replacement systems, 18 reconnections to existing systems, 3 non-plumbing permits, or 11 renewal or transfers. And as many of you are aware, we are required by state statute to have a mandatory pouts maintenance program. In accordance with this program, said systems are to be inspected every 3 years. So that we don't overload the system, we stagger the notifications once every 3 years. And in 2019, we sent out a total of 2,831 notices to Waushara County landowners, and working with pumpers and landowners to get these systems checked and pumped when necessary. This resulted ultimately in 88 citations, with right now we have 3 of those remaining as outstanding, which represents an overall compliance rate of 99.9%, darn near 100%. We are, by the way, getting geared up for this year's round of notices, which will be sending out over 3,400 notices later on this month. Our office also conducts a number of investigations. Last year, there were 230 code noncompliance inquiries made to our office. 245 of these reports were 245 reports that are on file were investigated and brought into compliance, and 120 non-compliance investigations still pending. Now, as I sit here and discuss the development and permit numbers, I know there's been a lot of concern raised over reports of the overall decline in construction and development and impacts upon rural America. These concerns have been featured in numerous articles and at organizational workshops and seminars. These concerns are real and something we are going to have to address and ultimately change how we attract and attain future businesses. Heather Schwarzenska and I recently attended a webinar entitled Forward Analytics. It was put on by the WCA, the vast majority of which focused on rural America and the issues we are now facing. Not only are baby boomers exiting the workforce at an alarming rate, severely impacting the workplace and the local economies, the younger generation are getting their educations locally, Stevens Point, La Crosse, Oshkosh, Appleton, Madison, but studies are showing that upon graduating, they're vacating these small rural communities for much warmer climates or larger regional centers that support their social and technological needs. Their needs are different from what we have been used to and, quite frankly, what we planned for. When we wanted a home with a yard and a good permanent job not too far away, the younger generations are wanting coffee houses, high-speed internet, social centers, diversity, and a somewhat permanent job. They tend to be more mobile, and unfortunately, they want little to no yard and, quite frankly, just a place not to be tied down to, but to crash. Article after article seems to spell the same trend. Keep in mind, this is not a local issue, this is a national issue. To this end, since it seems we're always preparing and presenting comparatives, I reached out to our neighbors, and primarily out of curiosity, but I wanted to see where we stood and, quite frankly, where they stood. So I put together this little bar chart here, and it shows that our overall land use permit numbers were second only to Wapaka. Now keep in mind that their population is nearly double that of Waushara County, and we weren't that far behind. Our sanitary permits were first among all the 4 counties, and our public hearing numbers were slightly behind those from Wapaka, but right in line with our neighbors to the south. Public hearings across the board have come down significantly everywhere. This is in large part due to the property rights bill that was passed in 2017, which now allows non-conforming uses to remain in perpetuity and actually provides for an expansion of said structures. And our department has also gone to great lengths to work with our residents, whether it be on-sites or walk-ins. I think we've done a tremendous job. Looking back at our numbers, permit numbers up, public hearings down, I think is testament that we can prove that we can work together for the betterment of the county. I'm getting back to our numbers here. Staff worked with 14 non-metallic mining sites involving approximately 208 active sites or active acres. Annual inspection fees netted the department roughly $4,000. There were 0 acres that were reclaimed in 2019, and right now only ½ acre that is pending for certification in 2020. Working with the SWRM, or the Soil, Water, and Resource Management Program, we secured $50,000 from the state for landowners for hard practices, which include shaping and grading, grassed waterways, riparian buffers, as well as wetland restorations and stream bank protection. We are tracking a total of 42,773 acres, which are right now under nutrient management plans, which represents about 46% of the county's tillable land. In 2019, for WEQIP, which is a water quality improvement program, we had 4 projects installed this year. We have 2 projects that were signed up for 2019, but will be carried over to next year because of the weather. And as I stated, with regard to the Water Quality Improvement Program, which is supported and financed by Waushara County, it allows for $25,000 per year to be used for cost sharing for worthy conservative projects. As it stands, we have 6 total projects, or had 6 projects. I would like to point out that we spent about $4,300 of that, to help administer the the Waushara County private well testing program. We will be utilizing funds out of 2020 to fund the last 6 townships out near the Central Sands region. Last year, we held the 13th annual Conservation Field Days, which is a hands-on environmental learning event at Camp Lucerne. There were over 190 students at the 5th grade level from all the public schools in Waushara County, as well as private schools and homeschooled children. This program has been increasingly funded by donations and is staffed primarily by volunteers in addition to departmental staff. If you'd like to observe this program, spend a day outdoors and walk around with the kids learning about the various environmental issues, please contact us. We'd love to have you sign up as a volunteer. This year's event is planned for May 14th and 15th at Camp Lucerne. I don't know what's going to happen here with the situation that we have before us. We also continue to contract with APHIS, which is the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, to provide the wildlife damage abatement and claims program. Deer damage payable losses in 2019 was a total of $26,817, and that was paid out to 7 individual groups or individuals. There were 54 deer that were harvested and one bear that was relocated through that program. As I alluded to earlier, our office is involved in multi-jurisdictional collaboratives. These are designed to address the regional and national concerns. The Winnebago Waterways Project is one of these efforts. Together with Fond du Lac County, Winnebago County, Calumet County, the Wisconsin DNR, Fox-Swift Water Alliance, numerous contributors, volunteers, and focus groups, we've developed the first ever lake management plan. This plan represents over 3 years of research, input, and participation with hopes of improving the overall water quality to the watersheds, basins, and networks of this system. I'm going to use the pointer up here. While we have only a small portion of Lake Poygan up in the northeastern corner of the county that protrudes, that you can see, even though we just have a small portion of the overall pool lakes, You can see we do have a number of watersheds, this area out here, that directly contribute to the overall water quality of the Pool Lakes. Our department had representation on the Watershed Technical Committee, the Shoreline Technical Committee, and I was also a representative on the steering committee. I'm proud of the accomplishments of this group and the quality of the overall plan. It is envisioned that this full plan will be unveiled later on this spring. It was supposed to be unveiled January 1st, but the weather even played havoc with the incorporation of this plan. The most recent county collaborative we become a member of is the Central Sands Groundwater County Collaborative. Our group is comprised of health professionals, land conservation professionals, and designated county supervisors from Adams County, Juneau County, Marquette County, Portage County, Wood County, and the Golden Sands. As indicated in the name of our group, we've been assembled to work together in assessing the overall quality in the groundwater in the Central Sands region, and to hopefully come up with a plan to tackle the amounts of pollutants that are getting into our drinking water. We are very blessed to have Katrina Shanklin, a representative from the 71st Assembly, that sat on our consortium. Katrina has been a huge advocate and supporter of Governor Evers and the Groundwater Quality Initiative. She is the vice chair of the governor's Groundwater Quality Task Force and has recently co-sponsored, and presented 13 bills that are currently going through the State Assembly and Senate. If passed, they could have a profound impact upon the region, as it would provide funding and programs to help combat future pollutants from entering our waters. One of the bills, Bill 273, which is slated for discussion, I think that's going to be put on hold as well. But one of those bills represents over $70,000 to the Land Conservation Department. So that will help us in terms of testing and possibly even securing an additional employee that would be a groundwater quality specialist. And lastly, as you can imagine, our office has been involved in fielding concerns from residents dealing with the extreme water that we've been experiencing. Last year was the wettest year on record. Lake Michigan was 16 inches above the last recorded high level. Our own lakes are 3 to 4 inches above levels that we haven't seen since 1998. I've given numerous presentations to lakes associations, lake management districts, lake councils, and residents regarding the current situation. We are working with all of these groups, educating them on where we are at, what we can all do, and how effectively we can armor our properties and shorelines to minimize erosion and damage. And I know Norm's going to disagree with me on this, but unfortunately it looks like we're going to be doing this for the foreseeable future, as both NOAA and the National Weather Service are predicting another wet year for 2020. As I indicated throughout my presentation, while 2019 was successful despite some challenges, 2020 is gearing up to introduce a completely different set of challenges. The economy, an upcoming election, Mother Nature, and now diseases. Our goals, however, need to remain the same: to continue and provide a high level of service to landowners looking to acquire various land use, zoning, building, sanitary, or manure storage permits, or looking to install a recommended conservation practice on their property. We also aim to continue to provide the best general information we can when landowners are looking to develop, install agricultural practices, or enhance habitat. While providing advice, we do everything possible to preserve our unique natural resources, safeguard public health and welfare, and secure state and federal dollars for best management practices so that we can remain financially responsible. I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it, how extremely blessed I am to have such a tenured group of talented individuals that I get to work alongside each and every day. I've always maintained an open door policy. If you have any questions at any time, please do not hesitate. Stop by and come in and chat. And with that, do I have any questions, comments?
Any questions? Everett?
I don't have a question, I have a comment. And I've had to shut down some lakes as far as high water and spring water. And the times I've come up here to zoning and asked him for help, and I'm afraid some of the people that were the angriest, I sigged them on on him.
Thank you.
And he took over, and I didn't get calls back, and I really appreciate all the work you've done this last year, and I'll probably be asking for more help this next year.
Thank you. It's, you know, we understand. I mean, it's a situation we have no control of, kind of like the disease that we're dealing with. People are anxious, people are frustrated, people are concerned, and justifiably so. And I think that our department does a great job. You know, we're very understanding. We try to explain things as best we can and try to help out as best we can. Unfortunately, with the weather, you know, we don't have that much control, but we can hopefully help them to, you know, secure, armor their properties so that we can minimize damage.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Medical Examiner's Office Annual Report, and that would be Medical Examiner Amanda M. Toma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone.
Good
I hope everybody
evening.
is doing well tonight. I decided not to use PowerPoints because I don't think the pictures that I would show you would be relevant here. So, I'll keep my social distance if you all wanted to take a packet.
Thank you. Okay. Know how to pass it back there.
Sit him down and then let him come back.
Took two.
Do you need some additional charts? or-
Nope, that's good. Here, anyway.
Thank you.
So the medical examiner's office was established on the 1st of January 2019. For the first 2 months of 2019, there was a deputy medical examiner that was hired and assisted in the call volume at that point in time. There was no office actually established to be run. I came on board as the full-time medical examiner on March 4th, 2019. And so the numbers that you're going to see are going to be skewed for 2019 because I wasn't completely on board for the first 2 months. And then when I did come on board, I was covering an additional county at that time. So the numbers are going to be different, but for 2020, they should be accurate, okay? So if we look at the first chart that you have, and that should be the one that says deaths on the top, you'll see that there were approximately 194 deaths in 2019. It breaks it down per month with the exception of January and February, like I mentioned, and March does show a surge of deaths at that time because we were covering those 2 counties. That's why you see that, but then it kind of levels off there. The second chart that you see is the manner of death. Manner of death is classified as, on a death certificate, as a homicide, suicide, accidental, natural, or undetermined. If you look at this, you can see that the manner of death we have here shows that we had 1 homicide, 5 suicides, 14 accidental, and 175 natural. That's really good for our community, okay? So when we look at what a cause of death is what the person actually died from. So if we have somebody who's dying from a natural death, did they die from metastatic lung cancer? And we try to be as specific as possible on those death certificates, not only for the family members, for the physicians, but also for statistical purposes in which people are receiving funding. If we look at the third chart, which shows a breakdown of the decedent's age, we can see that what's evident is that we have more of the 65 and plus, the aging population here, that is passing away. We're fortunate to not have a significant amount of deaths in the 0 to 18, as well as 18 to 25. If we switch to the fourth chart, where it says death certificate signer, this shows a breakdown of what the medical certifier signed the death certificate. So a medical certifier is either a medical examiner, a coroner, or a physician. So a physician can sign a death certificate. However, a physician cannot sign a death certificate when an injury occurred with the death. So if somebody died in a motor vehicle accident, however they were transported to Wild Rose Hospital, subsequently died there, the ER physician cannot sign that death certificate because it involves an injury. They can only sign on something natural that they were present for. So if somebody died in ICU because of lung cancer and they were put on comfort measures there, they can sign off on that death certificate. You can see on this chart that there's a minimal amount of physicians that are signing the death certificate. So we're at 17%. So that means 33 out of the total of 196 cases we had, only 33 were signed by physicians, which is good for families in the aspect of when we sign it within 48 to 72 hours. So once that person passes away, I get medical records and everything, comes to the office, I review them, we review the body exam, all that good stuff, and then we sign out those death certificates within those 48 to 72 hours. That becomes available to the family much quicker. If a physician signs it, they have to be faxed, it's called an attestation, and sometimes it takes 6 or 7 times to be able to get that back from that physician to be able to have it put into the system, because everything's electronic now. So once we sign it, it goes through the system within a couple of days, and it becomes available to those family members. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a lowdown how a medical examiner's case becomes our case. All deaths are reported to the medical examiner's office. All unattended deaths that are suspicious in nature become an automatic medical examiner's case. Hospice cases where the decedent will be cremated or an injury occurred that precipitated the death are classified as medical examiner cases. I know what we just talked about, that injury that subsequently was the cause of that death. When we are notified of a death with a suspicious nature, we respond directly to the scene. We speak with family and friends on scene. We pronounce the death, and a series of photographs are taken along with a body exam that's completed. Those photographs are then kept in our office, and they're secure. They're not released unless there is an open records request, which we try to deter families from doing that because we don't want their loved ones to be seen like that for them. We want their memories to be good. We work in collaboration with law enforcement, first responders, and EMS. We determine if an autopsy is necessary. We take specimens for toxicology or pathology review. We assist funeral homes with removal of bodies. We attend the autopsy. We request and review medical records. We complete and sign death certificates and cremation permits if necessary. And with this type of death, a minimum amount spent on time frame is 4 to 6 hours. That does not include an autopsy. So if I go to an autopsy, that's an additional 6 hours that we spend on transportation, participating in the autopsy and transportation back, working with the funeral homes on everything as well. Hospice deaths, when we are notified, it's made by a hospice nurse. If the decedent is being cremated and leaving the county, a response by us is necessary because we need to be able to view that body before it leaves the county, 1, to save the county on expenses, and 2, because we cannot have permission to cremate that body without viewing it. And we cannot cremate a body within the first 48 hours after they die. So we cannot even issue a permit saying that you can cremate that person the next day. We have to wait that 48 hours to expire. It comes from an old English law that fell down a long time ago where people were trying to hide homicides with cremation. And now may not exist as much anymore, but it still remains. We request medical records for hospice deaths, and we complete and sign the death certificate and cremation permit if necessary. In this type of death, the minimum amount spent is probably about 2 to 3 hours if it doesn't become too complicated. The final chart you'll see is the number of autopsies that we performed. And it shows that we performed 7 autopsies last year within those 9 month period. So we have to remember that we had 9 months, or 10 months, sorry, 10 month period. 10 months, so we're gonna have another 2 additional months this year, and it's looking to be that we are gonna exceed those by the middle of this year already. Within the office, so since I came on board in March, we have an office. We've established operating procedures. Those procedures are based off of the National Institute of Justice recommendations for death investigators. We've created forms that are used for all death investigations. We have a file on each death that's created. And since I'm full-time, I do sign all death certificates and cremation permits that come through here, because then, 1, it does save money for the the taxpayers, because our deputy MEs, they go out on the call, they're paid for that, but then I take care of the remaining balance of those cases. Supplies have been ordered, and we keep them stocked. We're always adding or amending these to see where we need to change things as death investigation stuff changes, forensic science stuff changes. Initially, I had met with most of the first responders to speak with them on what we kind of want to go through when we get on scene. Do they need to stay? Do they not? Do we remove stuff? Do we not? What would you like to see? And then in return, what would they like from me? I did meet also with one of the Amish bishops to introduce myself. I let him know who I am. I explained to him and his family that we will handle all deaths accordingly and based on their cultural differences, and we would respect those as well. He appreciated that very much. I currently attend the traffic safety meetings and participate in the child death review meetings. I have now completed the public information officer training to assist in public information release for deaths. I've established a relationship with Theta Care Laboratory for pathological testing when forensic testing isn't necessary. We are constantly on the outlook for changes that occur in death investigation to make sure we're practicing the standards recommended by the National Institute of Justice. And it looks like 2020 is summing up to be an interesting year for us. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Amanda, if you order an autopsy, I know the county pays for it, if a family member were to order an autopsy, would the results come back to you or to the?
If the family orders an autopsy,
Yes.
it's gotta be a private autopsy and it cannot be from any of the pathologists that we would use. It's paid for by them, the results are strictly to them.
Okay, all right.
But if
Thank
we ask, the family's been pretty okay with going, I'll share them with you. A lot of the times they're for pathological reasons. If something would potentially be hereditary, then we'd be able to check that out a little bit deeper.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Amanda, appreciate it. Next, we will have a presentation from Heidi Hensel-Buntrock and Jeff Lutrop on the 4-H food stand presentation. Thank you, Scott.
And Jeff is not able to, excuse me, Jeff is not able to be here this evening. He is my 4-H volunteer, and Jeff has put in, probably over 100 hours on our new food stand. He regretted that he is not able to be here tonight. But Scott and I are here this evening to share with you our plans for a new 4-H food stand. And while I say plans, we're actually in the throes of demolishing the current food stand. Our current food stand is about 60 years old. We do not know the approximate date, but Ken Peterson, when he was in 4-H in 1958, he actually worked in the food stand. So we're guessing it to be approximately 60 years old. It is in need of some remodeling. The existing interior needs replacing. Our vendors, instead of bringing daily shipments, are wanting to bring all of the food at one delivery. And we also, this new food stand will allow other organizations to be able to utilize the food stand on the fairgrounds. This is an overview, aerial view of our food stand. As you can see, the building to the north of it is a family living. To the right of it is the current Farm Progress Pavilion, and then to the south of that is the cement block bathrooms. Picture of our current food stand. This past year, Jeff and his family actually painted the food stand. We did put a Band-Aid on it, and that did help it out. We did put up a new sign. But a little history, shortly after the fair last year, I was approached by our president of the Washare County Fair Association, Doc Nelson. Just out of the blue, I think it was in October, he called me and he goes, hey, the Fair Association would like to buy the 4-H a new food stand. And I'm like, wait a minute. So meanwhile, we formed an executive food stand committee. Jeff was part of that food stand committee. Scott is on it. There are several other volunteer leaders. And we have worked very closely with Modern Pole, who is the general contractor on this, doing blueprints. We worked with a kitchen designer out of Madison to get an efficient kitchen layout. So this new 4-H food stand is going to have increased efficiency. It is going to have a walk-in cooler. So if you've ever bought a soda from our 4-H food stand, it probably was lukewarm. Now we'll be able to load all of the soda in the beginning on Wednesday when we receive it, so it will be cold throughout the fair. We are going to have a full commercial kitchen, and that was a decision that our group looked very heavily at. If we were to use the food stand 12 days or less throughout the year, we did not need a commercial kitchen. Right now, we're at about 12 to 14 days, and with the intent of renting it out to other groups, we decided to actually go with that full commercial kitchen. And our new food stand is going to have an attached covered seating area. In fact, Scott's group is working on picnic tables right now that will be under this the covered seating. Will be maintenance-free and handicap accessible.
It'll also be attached to the Farm Progress Pavilion that was built in 1990. So the two buildings will be basically in a T shape.
And this diagram here would be looking at the midway to the racetrack, looking east. So the left portion will have two roll-up doors. To the very left, where it's that blank space, that will be where that the walk-in cooler will be indoors. And then the right side is that covered pavilion, which will have, I think, is it 10 or 12 picnic tables? Scott? Okay, 15. And then also around to the right of that, there's another roll-up window. And the dimensions of our food stand is 40 by 60, so it is slightly larger than the current one. While this is very busy, this would be the exterior of the food stand. These are the blueprints from the general contractor. Here is the interior. One of the things that we've, with this new food stand, in that covered pavilion area, we're going to put a condiment station, so that will be where all the ketchup, mustard, and onions will be. So instead of having all this congestion with our, where we take the orders, once you receive your hamburgers and hot dogs, you'll then be able to move to the condiment station to put your condiments on. So that's gonna alleviate a lot of the traffic at those windows, so we can get the people their food and they can step aside for the condiments. The budget is approximately $175,000, and basically 100% of the funding is coming from the Waushara County Fair Association. While they've looked at various projects throughout on the fairgrounds, the Fair Association has deemed that by putting money into a new food stand, this would benefit all of the youth in Waushara County. This year, we have hit the 300 mark. We have 301 youth enrolled in 4-H. It's up 10 from last year. So the 4-H program is strong and it is growing. The building and concrete is approximately $95,000. The equipment and services, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and mechanical is about $80,000. The kitchen is going to have air conditioning, so while in the past no one wanted to work in the kitchen because it was 100 degrees, kitchen is going to be a popular area. But with our new food stand, we've been meeting monthly, and we've drafted new policies and procedures as far as only youth over 16 and adults can work in the kitchen. We've also tightened up a lot of our other policies and procedures for the clubs and the members.
I think it's important to note that the Fair Association has gone out of its way to hire local Waushara County subs for this project, from everything from electric, plumbing, you know, that Mark is going to be doing the gas work on the project, so I think that's very important.
And then other items that are being addressed, there is currently a leak in the water line from the bathroom and replacing the roof on the attached Farm Progress Pavilion. Scott, did you want to touch on that at all?
there's a few things that Waushara County is going to provide in this project, and those are a couple of them. We also will pull the permits, we'll take care of the landfill fees for the demolition, and a few ancillary things. But the bulk of the project is a fair association project in cooperation with 4-H leaders.
And 100% of our profits from our food stand do support the educational opportunities for our 4-H members. Last year, we sent 45 youth to our 4-H camp in Upham Woods. We provide scholarships. This year, we are providing scholarships for 16 youth to take educational experiences, provided they are able to continue to Washington, D.C., American Spirit, which is Boston, New York, and Philadelphia, 4-H Youth Conference in Madison, and Explore Wisconsin. We recently had, a couple weekends ago, we had a Project Discovery Day here on Saturday. We had 100 youth participate. That was up from 50 last year, and we had about 30 or 40 parents. So we had a full crowd in the demo room. And we offered 25 different seminars that the youth were able to take throughout the day. Different ranged from arts and crafts to animals to cooking to aerospace. So the funds from our food stand provide the supplies for these instructors, and also the community service projects that the youth do and other activities that do provide that positive youth development in Waushara County. And I am going to be, well, the plan was to go out to various service organizations with this presentation. We are accepting any tax deductible donations. Our goal is to raise approximately $25,000. We already do have a $5,000 pledge from an individual. This will be used possibly to purchase other equipment that is not part of the initial expense. We'd also like to establish a maintenance and upkeep fund. So I'd just like to thank you for your support of Waushara County 4-H throughout the years. And if you have driven by the 4-H food stand right now, it looks in pretty rough shape. We had a cooler there that we sold to an individual. They took that out this weekend. It's going to be, right now, the asbestos, we're working on that. And the target for demolition is the 3rd week of April, with construction to begin in May. The completion is July 1st, ready for Freedom Fest.
Anybody have any questions?
I don't have a question, I have a comment. A lot of the people that are doing the construction, they're donating a lot of their work, a lot of their time, including Mark Kirshner with his gas. I don't think he's taking anything for that.
Some of the subs are doing it just for materials.
Like the asbestos, his daughter's in 4-H. He's did the testing, and now that we had a couple issues, he's doing that removal. He's doing all that at no charge, so.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next we have reports and presentations. The first one will be the Community Development Block Grant Closed Program presentation, and that would be by Corporation Counsel Ruth Sowski.
Now comes the exciting time of the presentation. After they've all got you warmed up and you're ready to go home, we're going to talk about economic development and state rules and all kinds of fun stuff. So we'll try to move it along because I know that this is not that interesting. But I do need some direction, so I need you to pay attention because later in the agenda, you need to give me some guidance on how you want me to proceed, okay? So in 1996, the county board directed the creation of the Waushara County Economic Development Corporation, and that was done by the then community, they had a different name, but they worked for UW Extension. It was Mark Hilliker at the time. In 1999, the Waushara County Economic Development Corporation received its 501c3 status, and it started to administer a revolving loan fund for economic development. In 2004, the county board agreed to fund the Tri-County Economic Development Corporation with Marquette and Green Lake counties. All three counties decided that they would each put in $40,000 a year to have a corporation and an economic development coordinator to try to attract business to our Tri-County region. At the time that it was formed, it was not administering any of the revolving loan fund. That came later. In December of that year, it was recognized by the state as a non-stock corporation. In 2008, the counties agreed to transfer all of their revolving loan fund balances to TREDC to increase the fund and run it as a regional fund. In addition to the monies that each of the counties had, there were also some cities and villages that had their own funds, and they also added their money. For example, there was some money from Montello, there was some money from Endeavor. So everything in the area went to this one fund. This will become important later. In 2012, the Housing and Urban Development Department, which is a federal government department, audited the state of Wisconsin's Community Development Block Grant Program. So our revolving loan fund stemmed from the Community Block Loan Grant Program, which comes from a federal program. So all of the money in our program, even though they are not the original loans that started the program, fall under the guidelines set by HUD, okay? So those are the rules that we are currently having to follow. In 2015, HUD required the state of Wisconsin to repay approximately $15 million and advised them that they were concerned that the local funds having money, the local funds had money sitting too long, and there was possibly compliance issues with how they were running it. So over the years, HUD has changed the compliance rules. And when they did the audit of the state in 2012, they found that the state of Wisconsin was not following all the rules. So there are rules, if it's on job creation, there are rules on low to moderate income, there are rules on retaining jobs, and all of those things have to be tracked and reports have to be filed. And so the reason the state had to repay money was because they hadn't followed all of the rules that HUD had set up. And the state said, by the way, we don't think any of your local funds probably are because you weren't, so they probably didn't get the proper information. And then they told them in 2018 that you have to close down your local revolving loan funds. So this is a directive coming from the federal government. There will be no local revolving funds that are coming from this money in the state of Wisconsin. There is a chance there was some that were pre-1992 that have money that are defederalized. Those communities can keep that money, and there will be an opportunity to have revolving loan funds set up in municipalities, but not under the HUD guidelines. The state had to come up with a plan, and that had to be approved by HUD. In 2019, the CLOSE program was approved, and as part of that program, it was announced to all of the local municipalities that had post-1992 funds that by January 31st of 2021, the funds either had to be turned over to the state or they had to be bought out by the local municipalities. And what that means is that right now every revolving loan fund has a portfolio and they all have cash on hand. Since February of last year, we have not been able to make any new loans. So the money sitting on hand has just been sitting there and has been collecting interest and also has been increased as payments have come in from the loans that we have. So when you do your final report to the state, and it's the Department of Administration that is handling this program, you have to write a check for the balance in your checking account, and then you either have to write a check for the balance of the unpaid loans and buy out that portfolio, or you have to enter into an agreement to collect those loans on the behalf of the state. So, as of 2019, TREDC is no longer able to loan out any money but must continue to service the existing loans. Any modifications to those existing loans must be approved by the Department of Administration, and we can continue to collect an administrative fee for servicing until the close decision is made. So currently, you can collect 30% of what you get back in and payments can go towards administration costs for servicing the loans. We have two options. One is to turn over the portfolio to the Department of Administration, and the other is the buyout. So, and the reason that this comes back to you is because even though the loans are being administered by TREDC, these are all county loans initially, and the county retains the responsibility of these loans under the Department of Administration because the counties were the entities that originally received the funds from the state. And because basically our agreement with TREDC is that we hired TREDC to administer our loans, that doesn't take away the responsibility. So as far as the state is concerned, these loans belong to the counties, and the counties are responsible for the loans. So each of the counties is talking about this and making a decision how they want to proceed. If we turn over the portfolio, we write a check for all cash on hand that's currently in the checking account. The department then wants TREDC to enter into an agreement with them to service the outstanding loans until paid in full at our cost. No more collecting a fee to service the loans. There's no mechanism to charge a fee. However, there is nothing in the original loan documents that state we are responsible to do this work for free if the program is terminated. There's nothing in it that talks at all about how the program is terminated. I'm guessing from my conversations with the Department of Administration that this is probably one of the things that HUD thought was deficient, that there was not this continual oversight put in the state's programs. Me and the other two attorneys for the counties have been recommending and will continue to recommend that TREDC not sign any agreement to service the loans. We've actually told Department of Administration, get us tell me why I have to do it. Give me the legal authority for you to tell me I have to do this for you for no charge. They haven't been able to do it yet. Now, they're the state. I'm not saying that we'll win that argument, but our argument is we're not gonna do it. The loans will then also remain subject to the HUD rules. So whoever ends up administering these loans under this turnover policy will have to continue to follow all the rules set by HUD and file the semi-annual reports. There's a close report that needs to be completed and approved by the Department of Administration, and all the money is sent to that is given to the Department of Administration is put back into the state competitive grant program, okay? So right now the state has a community block grant program. It's done on a competitive basis. Applications are due by February, and then they start doing the approvals. But it's for the entire state, okay? The buyout. So like the turnover, we write a check to the Department of Administration for the cash on hand. In this, we would also write a check to the Department of Administration for the outstanding balance of the portfolio. We still have to do the close report, and we have to have that report approved by the Department of Administration. The full total of the RLF, the revolving loan fund, is put aside for the entities that bought it out until 1/31 of 21, okay? So this is why we need to start making some decisions. If we decide to buy it out, first of all, the state has told us we cannot split up the loans. So we can't just take the loans and look at it and buy out only Waushara counties. Whoever decides to buy it out, it can be one of us, it can be all three of us, it can be us and another municipality. We have to buy the entire portfolio, okay? So then we are stuck with all of the loans that are outstanding. But if we do that, all of that money is set aside in a separate pool from the competitive grant for this area. And then it becomes a non-competitive grant. Eligible projects in the buyout area can apply for a grant from this fund. Applications have to be in and approved by 1/31 of 21, and you have 2 construction years to complete them. In addition, these grant dollars can be used as match funds. So depending on the project, if it also qualifies for one of the competitive grants that DOA is doing, and you get that, those competitive grants require match funds, you can use this fund as your match funds, okay? The entities that buy out the loans are responsible for collecting the outstanding balances, but the loans are no longer subject to the HUD rules or oversight by the department from the state or the federal government. The entities that buy it out set the new rules. So the payments can be applied to whatever the entities decide. They don't have to go back into a revolving loan fund. You can repay the source for your original payment to the Department of Administration. So for instance, if we had to take money out of our general fund to pay for this, as the money came back in from the payments, we could replenish the general fund with that money first if we wanted to. We could make a new revolving loan fund and set the rules for how you could apply for that revolving loan fund and what type of information you would need to provide in order to maintain that revolving loan fund. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be based on LMI, it wouldn't necessarily have to be based on job creation or retention. It could be based on whatever you decide and how you set it up. Or any other option that the participating entities decided on. If you had a project that you all wanted to do together, you could use it to fund that project. Costs for servicing the loan can also be recouped from the payments. So if we had to hire somebody to collect the bills every month, to send out reminder notices, to recommend collection actions, or to follow through if there was foreclosure filed and filing the proper court documents to file the satisfactions once the mortgages were done. If we hired somebody to do that, we can recoup that cost through those payments if we bought it out, okay? The portfolio cannot be split. The entire portfolio must be bought, and it doesn't matter who buys it. Department of Administration has made it very clear they don't care where the money comes from. They just want the money. They're really pushing this option. Currently, about 95% of the entities who have made their decision are buying it out. Not every entity has made their decision yet, but the majority of them that have made it are buying them out. So what are some eligible projects if you had the buyout money? Public facilities, housing rehab, economic development, planning projects, public infrastructure, such as broadband, purchasing of materials, mitigation measures, public services, things to help with handicap accessibility, those kind of things. Depending on what project you have, though, you may have to meet low to moderate income standards in order to qualify. And what that means is that if the project has a low to moderate income as a qualification, then you have to have that service area or whatever the project is serving, at least 51% of that area has to be what they determine to be low to moderate income in order for that project to qualify. Okay, as of February 7th, our checking account balance is $382,000. We have 24 outstanding loans with a balance of $805,000. The total estimated portfolio is $1.2 million. The final balance is determined once we do the closeout. There are 2 to 4 loans currently being worked on for collections, may be written off, so that $805,000 may go down. For instance, we have a loan that originated here in Waushara County where the individual who took out the loan has passed. We are working with his estate through the probate attorney to try to get some payments. We're working with the widow to try to get some payments. But the security that was on the loan pretty much terminated once the inventory is gone and once that person is gone. And so whatever we don't get from his estate, that balance will be written off because there are no other individuals that are responsible. So that 805 might go down, so the 1.8 might go down as well. The majority of those 24 outstanding loans are paying on regular monthly basis. So this is what we want you to consider. While this fund has been administered by TREDC for several years, the ultimate responsibility for the loans remains with you. HUD could do an audit and require repayment of some or all of the amounts if it's found to be not in compliance. HUD or DOA could force the counties to continue to service the existing loans without compensation. Again, we're recommending that we don't sign the repayment agreements. Where that goes, if they push it and it goes to court action, I don't know. There's that possibility. We have identified some projects that may qualify for these grants if a buyout were pursued. The EMS building that you're talking about doing on the east end of the county would qualify. Already talked to the Department of Administration about it. They said, yes, that's a qualifying project, Ruth, but you need to look at the entire service area for that project, and it needs to fit the LMI requirements, okay? A senior center, if it's not limited to just the elderly, handicapped, disabled, some other classes have automatic qualifications and don't need LMI. But if you open it up to do more things than just service the elderly, it needs to meet LMI. The storm shelter, four-season shelter that has been talked about by Norm and some others, is a possible location at the fairgrounds, which would be an all-weather building, would have bathrooms, could be used for multiple things, would qualify. And the city of Watoma, under the last census information, which DOA allows us to use, does meet LMI. And in talking to them, because of like the trailer park and the people who would be serviced there, this would be a project that they would approve. So that would be eligible for the grant funding. ADA accessible modifications to parks, if they're approved by DOA, also would not need to meet LMI. So Scott and I had talked that there were some parks that maybe we had some stuff. Some other things that might qualify if a municipality, and it doesn't have to be the county, it could be a township, because we could work with the township on it in some type of fashion. It has a road, and it meets, we have a couple LMI areas, automatic in the county, and it's in that area. Those kind of things would qualify. Marquette County has reviewed this with their exec and finance committees. They are looking at possible projects and may be interested in participating in the buyout. They had just met with their group last week, so they were told to continue to look at it. Green Lake County has not made a decision, but in discussions, they haven't seemed very interested in the buyout, so it might just be Marquette and Waushara. Depending on who participates, you may need to come up with anywhere between $260,000 to $800,000 in order to do the buyout, if you choose to do the buyout. So these are the questions that I'm gonna want you to answer. We started an income survey for the EMS building on the east side. Approximately 1,050 surveys were sent out. Working with DOA, I worked with Brian and GIS, we determined the service area. It includes a couple of fully serviced municipalities and some partially serviced municipalities. So working with DOA, they said we had to send income surveys to every property in the partially served municipalities that had some type of home on it. That it would be, those would be the people most likely to use it, so vacant land was able to be excluded. In addition, they recommended that we send out surveys to the town of Bloomfield, even though it was fully encompassed, because their LMI at the last census was lower than the other LMIs. They thought if we could get it a little bit higher, it would help us. We currently need more responses in order for my statistics to be valid. So, for instance, there were 5 homes in Aurora that got sent surveys. I got 1 survey back. I actually need all 5 of them to come back in order for it to become a valid survey based upon the percentages that they use. Bloomfield, I think, sent me back enough that theirs is valid, but nobody else sent enough. I got surveys back from everybody. I got quite a few surveys back, but not enough. With the current information that came back, we are only at about 44% LMI. So there's a chance I don't know how good a chance, but with the additional surveys, that LMI would need to increase by another 7%. So I mean, yay, people are making more money than what we thought when we first sent out the surveys. And yay, people have been responding, so I've been very pleased with that. I had only one survey that came back and answered all of the demographic questions, and then told me it was none of my business what their income was. But everybody else has responded, that has responded. So, if you're interested in looking at the buyout option, then what do you want me to do? Do we look at projects that are already in areas that have already been determined to be LMI? Do you want me to try and get more responses on the income survey? So now I'm probably going out and knocking on doors and asking people to fill them out, trying to find people. Some of them might be easy to find because they might live there year-round. Some of them might not be because they don't live there year-round. I do have a stack that has, and by stack I probably mean 15, 20, that have come back with different addresses that we can send out to new addresses. There are a couple that sent me back and said they sold their property since the time that I got the list, so I can look at sending to the new owners. Or do you want me to see if there are other projects that don't require LMI standards? The EMS building, a community center, a storm shelter, DOA says would qualify, but they all need to meet the LMI in order to qualify for the grant. So that's all I got, unless you have any questions about any of this. And it's on the agenda later, but really, if we are going to do the buyout, it is probably best that we make that decision and then start filling out the closeout information and have our closeout audit forms finished with DOA by late fall, so that we have time to apply for the grants and have those approved by January 31st. You don't have to make this decision tonight, but we do need to start making this decision soon so we know which direction we're going in. If we're not gonna buy it out, we're gonna keep administering the loans until January 1st, 2021, and then on that February 1st, we're just gonna hand everything back over to the state. We're gonna do that at the last minute so we don't have to write a check to them for the fund. We'll keep collecting our administrative fee for the work that we're doing right now to collect it. We'll collect as much money back, hopefully close out some more loans so there will be less loans out there at that time. But if you're gonna buy it out, that decision needs to be made sooner rather than later, so there's also time to apply for the grants.
Could I ask you, are these loans, they're low interest, I'm sure, that are out there?
Yeah.
Are they all the same low interest, or are they?
They are not.
Okay.
So some of these loans are extremely old and had been given different varying grace periods because of different things in their loans. So the interest rates range between 2% and 4% for most of the loans. The smallest amount as of February that was still owed was about $5,000. Nope, $3,000. So there's one for $3,000 that's still out there. There are several loans in this category that are less than $10,000 that are still outstanding. And then the largest loan that's out there is still at almost $130,000 because it's one of the last loans that was given out. Now, they are paying every month, so that's good. They're not one of them that has been in default. Out of all of these loans that are out there, there is, other than one where the individual just recently died, there are now 2 loans where the businesses aren't operational. One of the loans just recently closed, and they have made their last couple of payments, so that's a good thing. And one of the loans the business has been closed probably for about a year. So that one, the Marquette County attorney is working on for collection type purposes.
Okay. I'm guessing some of them probably could be guided into refinancing with the low interest rates that are coming, with this
Right. So one of
Crisis
the
now.
things that we're doing right now is trying to get people caught up on their payments. And while we're doing that, we're also talking to them about telling them that this is coming, that we don't really know how it's gonna pan out. We don't know who is gonna be administering your loan after January of 2021. If you have the ability to refinance this through your bank or some other entity, this might be a good time to do it and pay us off, because otherwise you might be stuck with somebody out of Madison or somebody that they hire administering the loans who might not be as willing to work with you. So there are a couple of them that are looking at that option as well. Larry?
I think there was a lot of people that got the questionnaire that didn't understand the importance of it. And I think if they were contacted again, you could get their cooperation fairly easy.
Okay. I actually had somebody call after they saw you at a meeting and said, I didn't get my survey, where is it? And I said, you're actually in an area I don't have to survey, but thank you for calling.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Great presentation, Ruth. And I might add too that since Ruth and her counterparts in Green Lake and Marquette County took over the collection of this, some of them were really, really behind. So they've done a good job at, you know, working with these people and getting them back on track. All right, next we have a discussion of possible motion action items. Possible recommendation on community development block grant, the CLOSE program.
So if you can tonight, I'm kind of wondering if you're interested in the buyout option at all. If you're not interested at all, then that makes my life simple and I just go about my business and we keep moving on until January of next year. If you're interested, then we'll have to have further discussions about what that means.
So your motion, or the motion would be to continue to work on the CLOSE program?
Well, no.
Or not?
I need to know if you want to do, if you're interested in the buyout
Okay.
or not.
Okay.
Because if you're not interested in the buyout, our job is really easy. If you're
Okay.
interested in the buyout, then we'll have to have further discussions.
All right. Entertain a motion?
Does it have to be a motion, or can we just suggest to her?
Well, at some point, you'll have to make, at some point, it will become a formal action, because at some point, we're gonna have to come up with money to do the buyout. But when we talked about it at exec, they said that they could see some benefits to it, but they kind of wanted to know everybody's opinion on it, and whether you thought it was something beneficial, something that we should continue to look at, something if we should see would work for us, that kind of thing.
So if we make this motion now tonight to look into the buyout, does that hold us that we're gonna do the buyout, or is that just
No.
to see what
Yep.
can
That
go
will
with it?
continue in that direction.
Right, it lets me know that you want me to keep moving forward and finding projects for you. It lets me know that you want, that you haven't completely said no, so if Marquette County comes back and says, yep, I'm willing to do it, then I can come back and say, okay, we have these projects, Marquette County's willing to do it, this is where we're at, are you willing to pay this much money? Once I come to you for money, that's when you're kinda locked in. Right now, I'm just kinda wanting to know if you think that this is even something worth pursuing, knowing that, so the benefit is you might get this pool of money that you can use for a grant, so it will be a grant, it will not be a loan if you qualify for it. It gets, it's like a voucher thing, you give them your work orders, you pay it first, they reimburse you, but there's no payback, so there's no interest. So there's the benefit. The downside is you're stuck with this portfolio of loans that you have to collect. Some of them are relatively new loans, so unless there was a way to restructure them at some point in time, and there could be, but if they're paying, you might not want to. You may be having somebody collect on those loans for several years. And there's always the risk that somebody will default. I mean, these were all, high-risk loans. Most of them had financing from a bank, financing from CAP, financing we might be like the third creditor in line on some of them. So that's kind of what I'm looking for is you to like, let me know what you think. Does the risk outweigh, the risk of them not paying outweigh the benefit of you maybe having some money that you can get? If we had a project that we were already going to do and you were already issuing tax levy money for it and it qualified, this would be a way, so yes, you would take money out of the general fund, but you would get money back from the state to pay for this project that you were already gonna pay for. So, and you get money coming back in from the loans, so you might come out ahead and have more money to do additional projects. If all the loans defaulted, you're gonna lose the money that you invest.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I guess to simplify the issue, put it this way. Do you want Ruth to continue to fish for projects, or do you want to cut bait and be done with it? I don't have a strong position on this because part of me wants to salvage something out of this. Part of me, as I said at the last Tretzi board meeting, I'd like to put this organization out of its misery. If you cut bait and you wash your hands of it, that's fine, but be advised, we may not be out of the woods yet, because as Mrs. Collada alluded to, Ruth and her team are working these loans, which had not been serviced for many, many years, and I'm sure that there's compliance issues that may create legal and fiscal problems in the future. I don't know, can't guarantee it, but I suspect that we would not be out of the woods. So that's what you've got to give Ruth some direction, whether we're going to try to use this for projects here in the county or we're just done with it. But even if we're just done with it, it may come back for some problems in the future. But it depends on how much effort you want to put into this.
Yes, Everett.
Ruth, you did say that most of these loans are being paid back as we speak.
Yes, there are several loans that are past their maturity date, okay,
Right.
because they fell behind years ago. But out of the 24 loans, 20 or 21 of them are paying every month, currently.
And I believe that when you got a hold of this, or when you got involved with it, not near that many were paying these back.
There were more loans, at that time, when we first started this process a couple years ago. Since that time, there have been 3 loans that have been paid off, and 3 loans that have been written off due to foreclosures and bankruptcies. So I think we originally started out with 30 or 31 loans, and we're down to 24.
Could you tell the group again what the possible amount that the grant could be, in dollars?
Possibly 1.8 million. Because it would be the total of what's on hand in cash plus the balance of the portfolio. So right now, we don't really know what that portfolio balance is, because, like I said, so like the one loan, that we're working on here in Waushara County, the balance of that loan right now is $59,000. I don't think we're gonna get all $59,000 from the estate. So the balance of that would, be written off due to the fact that there is no more individuals left to collect from. So that amount would be lowered, so that $805,000 that's out there right now would go down by like whatever that amount is. There's the other one, that Marquette County is working on, that's approximately $6,000 where the business has been closed for a year. If they don't get that whole amount and they're able to like, document all the things that were done, that's $6,000. So that 805 might go down, so the 1.2 million might go down as well. It's an estimate right now.
I think it's in our,
So we're turning down almost $2 million if we don't participate.
1.2, I'm sorry, not 1.8, it was 1.18, so 1.2.
I think it's in our best interest to go ahead and have Ruth continue to work on this, and if we can get something out of it, I know the reason she did the survey in Poughkeepsie was that we could possibly use this for the new EMS station, which I think most of us realize we need over in that area. So, you know, at this time, to me, I think it would be a good idea for us to have Ruth continue to work on the clothes program.
I agree.
I think that's a good idea as well. I think, you know, we don't know what's gonna be happening in the next few months, so we can't say definitely go with it, but I think we'll be able to assess the risk a little bit better in a few months and see if some of these can get paid back, but I think it could be a definite advantage to our county. So, I'd make a motion.
Okay, your motion is to go ahead and to have Ruth continue to work on the clothes
Oh,
program.
yeah.
Second by Cap. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much, and thank you, Ruth. Okay, next is a motion to suspend the personal appearance rule as set by the county board bylaws, Article 2, Section E. Ruth, do you want to cover this?
So a few years ago, we had changed the bylaws that required that there be personal attendance by committee members and board members in order to count towards the quorum and to count towards per diems and that kind of thing. Given what is happening in our world today and the limitations that they are putting on social gatherings, as well as the fact that I don't know what your circumstances are gonna be, I don't know what other committee members' circumstances are gonna be. There may be some people who have some chronic health issues that don't feel comfortable coming to the courthouse because of the risk. You may face not being able to meet a quorum. So what this would do, it would temporarily suspend the personal appearance rule. Now, it's very important to remember that these are still open meetings and the state has not taken any steps to change the open meetings law or to suspend any of those rules. So even if you have a meeting that is done by electronic means, conference call, that kind of thing, there will have to be a way for the public to monitor that meeting. They don't necessarily have to be allowed to participate, so you can do a conference call with a line where they can call in and listen. We can set up another room in the county where there's like a speakerphone where they can hear what's going on, and we limit it to the number that currently 10, I think it is, people, where they can listen and audit it. So we would still have to make accommodations to meet the public meetings laws, but this would allow participation by phone means or Skype or however the meeting is coordinated and still allow you to meet your quorum.
Is there a sunset on this? I mean, is there a time limit?
There is not, however, that taken in conjunction with Resolution 8320 that's later in your agenda, which is the declaration of
Emergency.
the emergency declaration, that we have set to sunset go through your May meeting and then be revisited at your May meeting. So what would probably happen is that we would look at both of them in May and see where the situation is at.
All right, motion by Eckstein to suspend the personal appearance rule, right? Okay, and a second by Lauer. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thanks, Ruth. All right, consideration and possible action on the following ordinances and resolutions. Ordinance number 647, an ordinance amending Washera County zoning maps pursuant to the authority granted in Chapter 58, Washera County Code Zone Change for Michael Culligan in the town of Rose.
I make a motion to accept.
Motion by Lauer, second by Bonfiglio. Do you have any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next, we have ordinance number 648, ordinance amending Washera County zoning maps pursuant to the authority granted in Chapter 58, Washera County Code Zone Change, Paul Olson, Town of Saxville.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Lauer, second by Bonfiglio. Are there any questions or comments? All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, all right. Thank you very much, Ruth. Okay.
All right, Mr. Tim.
What's the motion?
The motion is to, let's see, to grant, the zone change for Mr. Olson.
Aye.
Mr. Cap?
Aye.
Mr. Eckstein?
Aye.
Mr. Jarvis?
Aye.
Mrs. Colada?
Aye.
Mr. King?
No.
Mr. Lauer?
Aye.
Mr. Kirschner?
Aye.
Mr. Bonfiglio?
Aye.
Mr. Piaski?
All right, thank you. Next, we have ordinance number 649, an ordinance amending Washara County Code, Chapter 46, taxation. Do we have a motion?
I'll make motion.
Motion by Mr. Lauer, second by Mr. Cap. Any questions or comments?
What is it? Can you explain it?
Sure. So, over the last few years, Elaine has been having some difficulty having appraisers put in bids to do the appraisals on the tax deed properties. Under the statute, an appraisal, so once you take a property by tax deed, you have to set an appraised value, and then you have to publish the appraised value, and you can't sell it for less than the appraised value without taking some other steps. But the word appraised value in the statutes can be determined in a couple of different ways. It can be determined by a certified appraiser, or it can be determined by the county board, or it can be determined by the committee that the county board has authorized to handle the tax deed sales. So what we are proposing in this ordinance is that we define the word appraised value as the value set by the executive committee, which is the committee that handles the tax deed sales. And then they will be looking, once the tax deed properties are taken, they will be looking at pictures, they will be looking at the last tax rolls for fair and assessed values. They will be getting reports from someone from Scott's department or Buildings and Grounds who has gone out to take up to close off the property as to conditions. They will get reports from zoning as to whether or not there are any existing zoning violations, and health department for any health violations, and then they will be setting the value that then will be appraised. This will eliminate the cost of getting a certified appraiser, plus it will hopefully speed up the process, because our process has been really delayed because we're begging certified appraisers to take the job, and then they don't get it back to us in a timely fashion.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next, we have ordinance number 650, an ordinance creating the Department of County Abstractor. Motion by Mr. Cap, second by Mr. Eckstein. Do you have any questions or comments?
So this kind of goes along with the tax deed process. We also have the title company currently doing like a limited abstract work. Part of it is so that make sure that the treasurer sends out proper notification on the tax deeds to any mortgage holders, and that kind of thing. The statutes allow you to be able to do that in-house. Our current Register of Deeds has indicated that there are other Register of Deeds offices that have done it. It's something that they're willing to do, and so this is to create that there will be an in-house county abstractor's office to help facilitate this process.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next, we have resolution number 07-03-20, a resolution confirming the appointment of the Register of Deeds as the county abstractor. Motion by Mr. Kirschner, second by Mr. Jarvis. Any questions? Larry?
Is this creating any additional cost to the county?
No.
And actually will save us costs because we won't be paying an outside entity to do this work.
Just seems like when you ask somebody to do some additional work that they should be compensated for it.
You already set the salary.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next, we have resolution number 08-03-20, a resolution issuing an emergency declaration pursuant to section 323-11 Wisconsin statutes. Motion by Mr. King. Second by Mr. Lauer. Do you have any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, next we have a proclamation designating April 13th through the 17th, 2020 as Tornado and Severe Weather Awareness Week. Motion by Mr. Kirschner, second by Mr. Piaski. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next, we have board suggestions for future agenda items. Our next meeting will be April 21st, 2020, hopefully, depending on how this goes. At 10 a.m., it will be the organizational meeting if we have an election. Okay, and then we will also have, if the schools are back in session, we'll have County Government Day, and that's it.
That's only if school is.
Yeah,
reopened.
school's back in session. Yep. Right. A lot of ifs.
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Eckstein to adjourn, second by Mr. Tim. We are adjourned. Thank you.